Hello, and welcome back to This Month on the Railroad, my monthly video covering each month's North American railroad news. Today's episode will cover May, which had quite a few exciting developments. Let's begin. From late April into early May, there was quite a bit of news about the California Air Resources Board's new regulations surrounding diesel locomotive emissions. This law, set to slowly go into effect over the next decade, will do a handful of things to decrease railroad emissions within the state. Beginning in 2024, all locomotives will be required to be equipped with an auto stop-start system and won't be able to idle for more than 30 minutes at a time. Railroads will be required to create trust funds to purchase low or zero emissions locomotives, with spending increasing for railroads with older ones still in service. In 2030, locomotives will be required to have prime movers younger than 23 years old, and finally, by 2047, all locomotives will be zero emissions. This ambitious plan will without a doubt create lots of change in the rail industry, not just within California, but nationwide. Hopefully, instead of battery locomotives, this will result in quite a bit of electrification. On May 3rd, following the Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern merger, Union Pacific, which will now compete quite a bit with the new CPKC, sued the Surface Transportation Board, stating that the merger has given CPKC an unfair advantage. Most likely, this is just UP's last-ditch effort to strike down this potentially detrimental merger, since the STB just spent well over a year assessing whether the merger would create unfair competition and still approved it. 2 days later, on the 5th, the Federal Transit Administration approved a $700 million grant to provide various different transit agencies with funding for new equipment. Chicago's CTA received $200 million to design a fleet of up to 300 new 9000 series cars. St. Louis's Metrolink received just under $200 million for 60 new Siemens S200 cars. The Cleveland Metro received funding for its Siemens S200s ordered last month. South Florida's Tri-Rail received $72 million to replace the older locomotives and rail cars on the fleet. Salt Lake City's Trax Light Rail received $60 million for 20 new light rail vehicles, which at this point haven't been ordered. And finally, Sacramento's Light Rail received $45 million for 15 new light rail vehicles, once again replacing older equipment. On the same day, Norfolk Southern released photos of a freshly repainted Southern Heritage unit, but more importantly, they formally announced that all 20 Heritage units across their fleet would be repainted over the course of the next year. This process began last month with the Reading unit, with many suspecting that all Heritage units were due for fresh paint, but this formal announcement officially confirmed that. It's definitely nice to see NS taking pride in their best-in-class Heritage Unit program, as in recent years, some have gotten pretty rough. Finally, on the same day, out west, 4 Siemens SC-44s departed the factory in Florin, California, bound for San Diego's Coaster Commuter Rail, where they'll be used to replace aging F-59 PHI locomotives and expand service with an additional 2 train sets. 2 days later, after Amtrak 184, the Phase 4 Heritage Unit was unexpectedly repainted back to the usual Phase 5, P42 number 164 was released from the shop in a nearly identical paint scheme to the former Heritage Unit, with the exception of 40th anniversary logos. Nobody's 100% sure why 184 lost its heritage colors, but the sudden removal of its 90s era paint scheme led some to believe that the 40th anniversary engines would be repainted. Luckily, Amtrak decided to bring it back just a month later, just on a different locomotive. On the same day, the Harbor Belt Line unveiled its first battery-electric locomotive, that being an EMD SD40JR Joule switcher. Originally planned to be delivered in 2021, this zero-emissions engine looks nothing like the renderings shown when it was originally ordered, but regardless, it'll be the Harbor Belt Line's first battery locomotive, beginning a new era for the Los Angeles-based railroad. 3 days later on the 10th, CSX revealed the beginning of potentially the biggest Heritage Unit program ever done on a North American railroad. An ES44 AC was painted into a unique partial heritage paint scheme representing the Baltimore and Ohio. Numbered 1827, or the year the B&O was chartered, this GEVO is the first of many Heritage Units on CSX, although unlike most railroads, its nose will remain in the modern CSX colors. This interesting decision to leave part of the engine unpainted left many rail fans confused, myself included, but either way, many have been wanting CSX to make Heritage Units for years, and they're finally here. 5 days later, another Heritage Unit program began, this time on Metro North. P32 ACDM number 208 received a wrap representing paint reminiscent of the railroad's FL9s. According to a board meeting slideshow, this is the first of 5 Heritage locomotives, with upcoming engines wearing New York Central, Penn Central, and Conrail paint. On the 22nd, following last month's report that it was the closest it had ever come to funding, Minnesota's Northern Lights Express received $195 million. This investment, along with a federal grant, will most likely allow this passenger service to get going, once again returning service between Minneapolis and Duluth for the first time since the 80s. As of right now, it's unclear who will operate this train, but either way, it's finally on track to be built, so that's definitely exciting. Almost a week later, on the 27th, some unfortunate news came out regarding Amtrak's new Acela II trains, which up to this point have already faced countless delays. This time, instead of blaming Alstom, the manufacturer of these trains, Amtrak says they need to upgrade the Northeast Corridor for this new equipment. As of right now, Amtrak's infrastructure is not ready to handle the Avelia Liberty, unfortunately meaning that they won't make their debut until 2024, making them over 4 years late. 2 days later, after spending 2 years on the Strasburg Railroad, Norfolk and Western 611 began its voyage back home to North Carolina. At this point, 611 is as much a part of Strasburg as it is the North Carolina Transportation Museum, but for now, it's returning to the place where it was restored. It's unclear whether 611 will return to Strasburg next year, but considering how popular it's been in the past, it would make sense for it to come back. It could also be a sign that 611 is preparing for its first mainline excursion in more than 5 years. The next day, all 4 of the new Amtrak Harry Potter ad wrap ACS 64s were unwrapped early after originally being planned to run into late June. After the ads began to peel, it seems that Amtrak pulled the plug, canceling its biggest ad wrap campaign to date. Unfortunately, I never got to see one of these Harry Potter units, ending my streak of seeing all ad wrapped ACS 64s, and even more unfortunately, this doesn't bode well for wrapped locomotives in the future. If Amtrak has to pull wraps a month early due to stripping, it's unlikely that they'll be eager to do it again in the future. Finally, on the 31st, an unpainted Metra SD70 MACH was spotted heading east from Pueblo, Colorado, meaning it's completed a nearly year-long testing process. Presumably, this means that the SD70 MACH is one step closer to entering service, with many theorizing that they'll enter service on Metra later this summer. No matter what happens, when they do finally hit the rails, they'll be quite the sight to see. So that's May, a month full of interesting stories that'll continue as time goes on. Union Pacific challenged the CPKC merger, multiple transit agencies received funding to order new equipment, Metro North and CSX began heritage unit projects, and the Northern Lights Express received funding. Be sure to stay tuned for future videos. We'll continue to report on these developing stories. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in another video.